right. Well, hi, Curt. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Devon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is the NAMI Central Oregon podcast, Be Kind to Your Mind. And NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We're a grassroots organization providing free support groups and education programs to individuals and families struggling with mental health challenges. Today we have Curt, who is one of our family support group facilitators. He's been doing this for a little while now, and we would love to just get to know you a little bit today, Curt, and start with maybe just tell us a little bit about what brought you to NAMI, what made you want to facilitate a family support group.
So I first learned about NAMI about a year ago when I was taking a class at COCC called Co-occurring Disorders. And an assignment for that class was to seek out a mental health support group in town and to attend it and to, um, provide feedback for the class about that experience. And so just kind of picking out of the blue, I picked the NAMI support group meeting that happens at Embark on the second and fourth Wednesdays each month and showed up there out of the blue. Um, the woman who was facilitating, I identified myself as a student, and she, was cautious about that. She waited until the rest of the group arrived and asked everybody's permission if it was okay that a student, was there. And so, I came to my first NAMI support group meeting as an observer. But during that very first meeting, the subject of suicide came up. And that's something that's very tender for me. I've unfortunately been touched by suicide a couple times. And I found that the conversation struck a lot closer to my heart than what I honestly was expecting. And I also felt like I learned a lot. I went back to school a little over a year ago with the aim of becoming a therapist. And so I have this newfound interest in the mind and in mental health. And I found my first experience at a support group meeting just to be um, very enriching. It was a great learning experience for me. And I found the subjects that came up, I guess especially suicide, really, really profound and moving.
Yeah, those that can be really powerful. I feel like I've witnessed and kind of been in that situation myself where I kind of walk into something and I'm like, I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna watch or I'm just gonna listen, and then ended up being really moved or touched. And the funny thing, not funny, but the thing is that mental illness touches all of us, whether we realize it or not. So
Yeah.
um, going into that space was probably a little intimidating, not really knowing who these people were and what was going on. But so glad that you found some camaraderie and some connection there.
Yeah, I was just really taken by the connection that I found. I would say it was really surprising to me, but wonderful too.
Yeah,
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 and and so I just kept on going to the meetings, uh, and and eventually Casey invited me to become a facilitator, and I thought that sounded great, and so I did that, last August. We were actually in class together, and the facilitating's been a really great experience for me.
yeah. Which brings me to kind of our next topic. How has facilitating a family support group shaped how your own view of mental illness and your own view of um, getting support and families who are going through this?
Yeah, I would say that uh, I didn't understand how powerful dealing with mental illness was for those that are, exposed to it, especially within their own family, and the kind of confusion that goes along with it, not knowing where to turn, the stigmatization. Um, I'm sorry. Where was I going here?
Just has the experience shaped your view of mental health, mental illness, and
Yeah,
has it
absolutely.
shifted your own internalized stigma? Because I still have internalized stigma that comes up every now and then. I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think another thing we're going to talk about is like things that I needed to unlearn, and that's what this
Yeah,
is sort of bringing up for me.
yeah,
Is I would say, as growing up in the '70s, I'm going to be 55 in June, and growing up in my world, I had an understanding from family and so forth that mental illness was something you were born with, and that it was, genetic kind of thing. And I guess it is, but what we're learning more in recent decades is that genes change all the time, and that mental health and our mental health status is profoundly affected by things like our, day-to-day experience, trauma, diet, substances we ingest, and I would say that as I continue down this path, my mind continues to be open to understanding that.
yeah. There's so many factors that like the perfect storm comes together, and people struggle who maybe never thought they would. People with extensive family histories either do or don't, but it's kind of that nature versus nurture, and I think it's a lot of both. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's an
And
interesting.
the storm analogy is a good one because it leaves room for hope because storms end, you know.
Yes, exactly, which
Yeah.
is so important. Um, when people first show up for a meeting, maybe their first time, um, what do you find that they need the most, and what's the most um, uh, the biggest thing that they usually walk away with?
I think that a lot of times people, there's the stigma.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of people come to our NAMI support groups for the family support group because they want a confidential space where they can talk about things that they're really scared about, that they don't understand, that they don't understand where to turn to. They don't want to talk to friends. They might not want to talk to other family about what they're experiencing with a loved one just because they don't, because it's scary to them. And there's this terrible stigma in our society about all this. And so I think the number one thing that people need to feel when they come to the family support groups, they need to feel safe and they need to understand it's a confidential environment, and that they're not I mean, these mental health is so confusing, like these challenges are so confusing that a lot of people might be inclined to think that their experience is unique and that what they're seeing is something that's really unusual, and uh, kind of unfortunately, it's not. These things are common, and people are having mental health crises and challenges and meltdowns kind of all the time. And yeah, and so people need to, uh, yeah. So I think what people need is to feel comfortable and confident, and that there's going to be a confidential situation.
Yeah, so all of our groups are confidential, and I think that is um, helpful for people to know. And it is such a huge relief when you can walk into a room, and sometimes the first time you don't know if you can take off the mask, but I think pretty quickly you realize, oh my God, I can take off the mask, and like, what a huge relief that is. I can
Yeah,
exhale now. So having that safe space to do that, I've seen be really impactful for people.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Um, I want to shift gears a little bit because you, sir, just got accepted to the MSW program at, is it PSU?
Yes, yeah.
Tell
I'm
us
super
about
excited.
that.
Well, I start school in the fall, and it's a 3-year program, and 1 year full-time study, and then 2 years of practicum work. And yeah, so I'm going to become a therapist.
That's
It's pretty
amazing.
exciting. Yeah.
Congratulations on your acceptance, by the way.
I know, I'm pretty excited. Yeah, it's really fun at my age doing this. It's kind of unusual for someone my age to be going back to grad school, but I think it's like really secret sauce stuff. Like I'm onto something magical here. I'm
You are so
having
onto
so much
something.
fun. Yeah, I mean it's just I'm just tickled to death with this experience and being in school for the last year. So um I was a terrible student as an undergrad 30 years ago. My graduating GPA in 1996 was a 2.093. And two times since then, I applied to go to grad school. I always had this, what I was told is that the grades wouldn't matter if you found the right program. They would say, oh, you got to take a class or two, and then we'll let you in. I got shot down hard by two graduate programs that basically told me I would have to get a new bachelor's degree to be considered for application. It was a 2.092 GPA. And so that's always just really been annoying to me because I think I'm a pretty smart person and I love to learn and I love to read um, and it just always bugged me that I got shot. I have my wife has two master's degrees. She's like barely ever got a B in her entire life. So I can't lie. There's a little bit of a competitiveness there with me and her.
I gotta
Uh,
get started on these degrees.
yeah, maybe a little. Um, and so
What?
anyway, the idea of going back to school to try and become a counselor came out of a conversation with my long-term therapist about a year and a half ago. And we didn't really even talk about it. It was just a really meaningful conversation that I had with him. And I worked with him for over 10 years, starting when my mother became sick with lung cancer back in Baltimore. And we met in person for about 3 years then. And then we had about a 2 year break when I initially moved out here to Bend. And then when the pandemic set in, I felt like I wanted to talk to somebody again, and I was going to be in a virtual setting with anybody from around here, and I was like, well, I got Dr. Tom back in Baltimore, he already knows me, and so we started off in a virtual setting, which um, as I approach counseling, it's not my favorite modality. I'm very much a fan of sitting in person in front of somebody, but Tom and I had already had this long experience with working together in person. And as it turned out, Tom was a blind man anyway, and so he, could never see me. So,
It was all the
uh,
same for him.
yeah, exactly. So as I thought about it, it actually ended up working out just fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so, the idea of going back to grad school or going back to school came out of this conversation where I was just like, wow, because Tom wasn't the only therapist I ever worked with. There had been, a few others over the course of life. But my relationship with Tom was so much more meaningful. And I had a couple really bad relationships with therapists too, where, I kind of felt fired or it just didn't feel like it did any good for me.
Yeah.
Um,
It can be hard to find the right fit.
totally.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just had this kind of inspiration to that, I'm like thinking about my age and when we moved here to Bend, I started a business making dog food that didn't pan, and the whole concept of Curt, the entrepreneur, also didn't pan. I just didn't
Dang it.
find that to be me. Yeah, and
Yep.
so I spent a couple years kind of during the pandemic. We have this beautiful place in Tumalo, and I'm just going from house project to house project. And fortunately, my wife works remotely and has the financial situation pretty well in hand. So I haven't had a lot of pressure, but I felt a want to do something else. And so the idea of going back to school came out of this conversation, and very quickly, this was like in October, and I signed up for classes. I signed up for 14 credits at COCC and showed up in January.
Wow.
And it was intense, my first term. I'll tell you,
Sure.
3 of 4 classes had the word addiction in them, and it was a lot of read heavy, somber, somber study.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of intense.
So why counseling and not firefighting or um, furniture building or IT or what have you?
Well, I've been through a lot of other things. I've had somewhat of a, uh, wandering career, I would say. Um, and I would say it's my relationship with Dr. Tom. Okay, one, the fact that I come from a pretty troubled background. I'm the only child, broken home, never had a relationship with my father. I was the quintessential latchkey kid from the 70s, very much figured my own way through life as best as I've been able to do it, and have had a few good counseling relationships. Certainly the best one was Dr. Tom that really helped me in that regard. And I'm at a uh, well, and I also went for a long time thinking that my best way to give back and help others would be through starting a business and becoming an employer. I mean, I literally spent years and years just kind of aspiring in that direction. And then I realized that that wasn't going to be a fit for me. And so it's like, so how can I give back and how can I utilize my energies? And then I had this conversation and just started running at it.
I love it. You took action.
Yeah, and there's other stuff too. I'm looking at AI, this
Yeah.
tsunami that's coming at us, and I wonder a lot what that's going to do to brains, and it's really fascinating being back in the academic world right now as AI is becoming more and more of a thing. And you've got one professor saying don't ever talk to AI, and another professor saying use AI, use it a lot. And it's really, really crazy right now.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, the whole world is in this kind of transition of what do we do with this? And
yes.
I was thinking about this the other day too, because it's you want to be able to, you don't want to lose the ability to think through problems. And sometimes I find myself like, oh, my brain is tired. It's the end of the day. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT over here.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's a helpful tool. It's been,
yeah,
a lot of ways. I think the hard part is that at some point, I don't think we get to choose. It's inevitable, like it's happening.
yeah. Our notion, our fixation on capitalism and our notion of competition on an international scale has, the powers that be just saying, no, we have to beat China and just let this go completely unfettered. And it's horrifying, when you think about it, but
Um,
it's it's what's going down.
it's,
Another big thing for me that had me choose counseling was my relationship with my friend Christy, who was she's one of the people that I know that committed suicide, and this is about 5 years ago, and uh, and this was somebody who I was very close to for a long time. We were housemates for years. I knew her husband very well, um, and she had a turn of her mental health that was really stunning. Um, and she descended to a point where she took her own life. And it, when I found out, I had never known that she had, 2 years before she had successfully, committed suicide. There was another attempt,
mm,
and uh, I hadn't, she was when I left Baltimore, she was one of a half a dozen people that I made sure I connected with and had lunch with, because just as an indication of how I felt about this person. And but like most of my friends from Baltimore, eventually you kind of lose touch. And I hadn't talked to Christy for about 3 years,
mm,
and I think a lot of that was because she hadn't reached out because she was, going down this terrible path. And
mm,
so it just destroyed me that my friend Christy had died and had never thought, because this, during our earlier relationship in our 20s and so forth, we had a lot. I mean, we dated, we had a lot of deep, thoughtful conversations and plans to stay friends forever. And I always supported her in her relationship with her husband, and I knew her daughter, and it just crushed me that she died and I never heard anything about it. And so another major factor for me to pursue this is I want like everybody to know that I'm somebody that can be talked to, and that, I want to think I can, like I want to develop skills so I can help.
Right, right. Yeah, that can really change the trajectory of our lives, of our, view on the world. It's so hard to lose someone, and especially by suicide. Um, it makes sense to look for answers or just, feel helpless and want to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too. It was changed my life. Ultimately, I think I have been able to find some meaning out of it, but it has been a rough road, and, years longer than I expected of grief. A lot of pain, but yeah, it's it's a tough one.
Sorry.
Yeah. So as you've been like in school and leading the NAMI Family Support Group, are there any areas like in Central Oregon specifically where you notice like there's a gap here and some need needs to be met? Um, what are families struggling with the most that has kind of getting people stuck?
I guess my best thought on this question, I think is a good one, is that I see in the family support group setting a need in the very, very front end for where it's, my child's had like a psychotic break, or, something really profoundly confusing has happened in their mental health. And and they just don't know where to go to first. Like they haven't heard about Deschutes County mental health, and kind of the first kind of stepping stone. And so I would say the gap is in frontline awareness, just that these things happen. Like everybody knows, like if somebody has a drinking problem, to go to AA.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and so, and people just don't understand where to go. Like they think, oh, we need to go to an emergency room, and that might, that is a place to go, but that
Mhm.
might not always be the best place to go.
Right.
And and furthermore, a lot of times I think mental health situations get to these places because people ignore warning signs from young people. And I think that parents and everybody needs to understand how hard it is to be young right now, and how, I mean, uh, I think every generation has a tendency to think they have had it harder than previous generation. I mean, I know I certainly did.
Mhm.
I come from Baltimore, and everybody who was 15 or 20 years older than me got to take advantage of this dollar house program in Baltimore. That, by the time I was shopping for houses, these houses were all out of my price range and so nice, and there were no more dollar homes available in the city except for in these really crazy, disparate neighborhoods.
Right.
And but I think for this current generation with AI coming at us and all these other challenges, it's so much worse. And I think a lot of young people have really profound questions and about things like sexuality that are really foreign to people my age, and people will tend to um, dismiss a child who is talking about confusion with their gender and things like that. And that can, um, people have questions and confusions about things like that, can often, like it can go in a really bad direction for them.
Yeah.
And so I guess don't ignore the warning signs. And I think that there's a gap in terms of people being able to see upfront what uh, mental health breaks look like and where to go first.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I'm
I
hearing,
feel like I rambled a bit there.
no, you're good. I'm just hearing like first episode support and um
Yes.
prevention or just people knowing and understanding that this is common and it's treatable. And
Normalizing.
mhm, exactly. So, which brings us back to reducing stigma. And I think it's so interesting when we can have these conversations out in the open or post them on a podcast. And you never know who's listening that might be like, oh, we can talk about that, and then move from there. Like, okay, wow, okay, maybe there are resources. Where do I go?
Yeah.
Um, I think it just doesn't even dawn on people sometimes until they've heard someone else open up.
And I think taking a class like co-occurring disorders open my eyes maybe a bit to a chicken egg situation in terms of chemical, substance use and mental health.
Mhm.
And our society believes, I think for sure, that a willful decision is made to use substances,
Mhm.
and that decision leads to a break in mental health.
Mhm.
And I think it can go that way, but I think it's just as likely that somebody's experiencing anxiety, depression, things that they're not finding solutions for otherwise, that has them initially turn to use substances.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that just takes them further down that hole.
Right, right, like a self-medicating pattern.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And um, I also heard you say that people need to not ignore the warning signs. First, they need to know what they are, then they need to not ignore them. And I wanted to add to that, like, approach these things with curiosity and not judgment, or there's something wrong, or there's something crazy going on here. I mean, if you can catch it early, you can ask more questions like, hey, how are you feeling today? Why did you
Yeah.
choose to do this one thing? And make it more of a dialogue with kids or with young adults or whomever, really.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on thin ice with talking in this regard about, especially about how to deal with young people, because I never had kids. I don't really understand, I guess, the parental perspective in some regards, but when I say look out for warning signs, it's just um, I think a lot of young people these days are experiencing young kids have this access to the internet and experiences that are so foreign to people my age that I think that a lot of folks like me have a hard time kind of understanding or giving credence to their troubles. And so there might be a tendency to blow them off and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love that you can identify that and call that out in what you're seeing and in yourself, like understanding that we are from different generations, and that does matter. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We were raised differently, and our access to resources is either different entirely or different in the format of how we learn things. So
Kind
yeah.
of have a good, I think I have a good analogy for that. And it's I saw a YouTube video I saw a little while ago that was called The Analog Generation. It was about my generation, people in my 50s. And we're kind of some of the last folks that are still around that can remember, like I didn't get on the internet until my junior year in college. And the internet wasn't worth a hoot until I was like until 5 or 6 years after that. That's when like everybody was on it and that sort of thing. And so there's that. Um, And in that video, they talked about the concept of bullying.
Hmm.
And so when I was a kid, there were bullies. Like I'm a big guy, but I remember getting bullied by a couple really nasty kids that were much smaller than me when I was a little kid. But being bullied in the 70s and the 80s ended at your doorstep.
Hmm.
These days, with social media and all that brings, bullying happens 24/7. There's no way for kids to get away from it. And so, as an example, you know, a young child that might go to a parent and say, I'm getting bullied, a parent might be like, well, it's no big deal, just don't log on or whatever. But it just doesn't, it's just a very, very different experience for young people now.
Right, right. Especially when even schools and educational institutes are requiring kids to be at least online, not on social media maybe, but at least online for educational purposes.
Yeah.
It's like right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And when before the internet, um hopefully, most kids could find a safe space at home and be okay in their home, go go to school and get bullied, come home. So I see that. Yeah,
Hopefully, yeah.
hopefully, I mean, in the best case, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. um
Yeah, some of the things they talked about in that video was, and it really made me remember, was just being bored sometime as a kid.
mhm.
Like you were just like, it'd be like the 70s on a hot Sunday,
Mhm.
afternoon or whatever in the fall. And it would be like, all right, the big idea is let's go pick up acorns and throw them at each other.
Hey, but creativity is born out of boredom. Like
Yeah.
that's we need to be bored. We need to throw acorns. We need to, you know, play in the dirt. It's natural. And
Doesn't happen as much as it used to,
it
unfortunately.
doesn't. No, no. But I
Do
have
you have kids, Devin?
what's that?
You have kids?
I do not. I have two dogs. Sure, the same thing completely. So
Yeah, I have two dogs as well.
yes. Yeah, no, I honestly never really wanted kids. I think I struggled so much in my youth with my mental health. I never really gave it a lot of thought. And I guess I thought, like, God, if I ever get through this, it sounds selfish, but like now that I am through this, or, managing this, I want to do the things that I want to do. I want to do the things that I missed out on from, 10 to 25. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I want to go out and play and travel and, get a lot of dogs and uh, that kind of thing. So I'm just ready to embrace recovery. And for me, that just doesn't include kids, at least not right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're young. There's plenty of time if you change your mind,
Yeah,
but maybe you won't.
I don't think I will.
That's all good.
I won't say never, but
Yeah. My wife is pretty steadfast, not interested in having kids. Um, I'm I'm happy that we made that was our decision. Like I grew up in like I said, a situation where I pretty much was figuring things out on my own. My father was never a part of my life, uh, and so I just was always like, well, what kind of a father could a guy be who never had a father?
mm,
And I've had, people successfully argue that maybe I would have been a good father, but didn't happen.
didn't happen. And, life goes the way it's going to go and you're
Yeah,
cool with it.
yeah, totally am.
Yeah. Um, we have one last kind of section. Um, let's talk a little bit um, about what keeps you coming back to facilitating the support group, to being in this mental health space. Because it can be heavy, it can be tough, but what's the reward for you?
I really like NAMI. I really like Casey. I really like you. I really like everybody that I've been exposed to that's been associated with this organization. Volunteer work has always been a part of my life. I've always tried to volunteer in different capacities, and I've, tried, and volunteering is kind of big in Central Oregon, I think. A lot of people, my age in this area, do, a lot of different volunteer things. And I tried other stuff. And what I found is that the kind of the sexier kind of volunteer opportunities are sort of overrun here, like I've done a bunch of volunteer work for Central Oregon Trails Alliance, where you show up for these work parties and there's, like 30 people and 10 shovels
Mhm.
to work on a trail. I was in the Deschutes County Master Gardeners for a couple of years where they make a lot of hay out of, the privilege of calling yourself a master gardener, but
Mhm.
uh, and they get just like 50 or 60 new people that sign up every year to join this Master Gardeners group. And so you honestly get to have a hard time finding enough volunteer hours that you can still qualify.
Right.
And so I just didn't find either of those to be very rewarding
Yeah.
modes of volunteership. And and I find NAMI very rewarding. Like, you guys reach out, you show a lot of appreciation. People that come, it, if I might say so, I feel like I'm pretty good at facilitating groups. I'm terrible at public speaking. Um, I'm not usually very good in big groups. I played a pickleball tournament with like 14 middle-aged men a couple weeks ago that were all just, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's just like, I'm kind of like a fish out of water.
Oh, God.
But yeah, but the facilitating the groups works for me. Like my wife tells me I have a very calming demeanor and voice, and I think I'm able to make people feel safe and able to communicate.
Yeah.
And so that feeling like I do a pretty good job of it makes me want to keep on doing it. Uh, and it troubles me that I don't feel like we come up with a lot of solutions for people. In the peer support training, we talk about um, uh, employing group wisdom
Mhm.
for as we're facilitating, and that it's not our job to have all the answers.
Mhm.
Um, but I sure wish I did.
Right.
Uh, I would say there is a clear moment for me when this woman who only unfortunately came to one um, family support group meeting.
Mhm.
Her name was, and and this was the last meeting when I identified myself as a counseling student. The first few meetings I did that, it sort of seemed good because it kind of gave, people were like, oh wow, we got a counseling, like, and I'm older, so they sort of
Yeah.
look, say I'm a counseling student, they just sort of drop off the student part and they think, oh yeah, he's a counselor. And I sort of leaned into that maybe a little bit for a few until this time when this mother just looked at me and she was horrified. She was like, My son is continually telling me he wants to commit suicide and I want to know how to fix him." And she just looked at me like she wanted me to give her that answer.
Oh,
And I was just like, I mean, like, like, it's the last time I identified myself as a counseling student. Like since then, I just go in and I'm like, I've experienced depression in my family. I was like, I've been exposed to suicide, but I'm not going there now because people want us to have these answers.
yeah.
And so
Yeah,
that's hard.
that is hard.
But at the same time, what keeps coming back is that we do get some great group wisdom going. Um, uh, right now, like we've got 3 or 4 folks that are coming back every week to our family support group meeting, and that's really great. And uh, like I wish that lady had come to it, or maybe she'll come back again.
Mhm. It's
There've been a couple people like that, especially parents that have kids that are talking about suicide. Like it just really hits me.
yeah. I mean, as I would expect that. It's a very different thing to as as a former dog rescue volunteer manager, it is a very different thing to hold a puppy and say, please come volunteer for us.
Yeah.
And it's a very different thing to say, please come plant some flowers for us. Please come, um, it's a very different thing to say, please come sit with people in the darkest moments of their lives and
Yeah.
manage your own pain around that too.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough
You
act.
say that, it almost brings a tear to my eye, and I'm like, I love it. Like
Yeah.
that sounds maybe dark, but
It does
it
sound
just,
a little dark.
yeah, but
It's
it's
vulnerable. It's very
yeah,
vulnerable.
it's just, like you just wanna help. It just seems like a more profound way to help.
Yeah. And it makes our volunteers really, really special because we have people who, have experienced these things and are coming back into it. They feel a sense of purpose or maybe duty, but that they get a lot out of supporting people. And I think it is one of the bravest things that we can do is willingly step into pain with another person, even if we've had that same pain, especially when we've had that same pain. And I think it's what makes peer support so valuable, um, because people can feel that. People can feel, a clinician who is telling them, okay, well, have you tried deep breathing? Have you tried yoga? Let's try some deep breathing together now. Um, it's a very different feeling when you can really drop into a moment with someone, even if you don't have the answer, and be like, I I don't know how to fix this. Maybe in a regulated moment, you can offer some things that have helped you in the past, but really just sitting in that pain is so powerful and so just beautiful. So, but they don't put that on the brochure. Well, we kind of do actually. But yeah, it's a very different population, and I am so grateful to be in a community where people are willing to do that. People are willing to have those tough conversations. When people say, hey, how you doing, they mean it. And so I think it's really beautiful um that NAMI has become a very safe community, even for uh facilitators and program leaders um and staff and board members, to all just be really real with each other. uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Um, all right, my last question is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a family member who feels overwhelmed right now?
Um, just to breathe and um, understand that profound problems don't have immediate answers, and it's entirely understandable and normal to feel overwhelmed by stuff like this.
Yeah. Yep. Being with them in that, and validating that, like, this is a tough moment. You're right. And it's not going to get better right away, but we're here for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Um, well, that is kind of all I had. want to add anything? Anything we touched on that you want to elaborate on, or um, yeah, any other anecdotes?
I don't know. I can't think of anything offhand. It seems like we've had a pretty full conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really, really appreciate you being here for, being here, being willing to be a guest on our podcast. So
Yeah, happy to do it.
thank you.